Hi, I'm Janis France,
And I'm Chris France.
and we're health psychologists at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, USA.
Thank you for coming to our talk, which is titled A Tablet-Based Intervention to Increase the Confidence of Fearful High School Blood Donors.
In considering blood donation, we all have pros and cons. For those who ultimately choose to donate, the cons don't necessarily disappear. For example, someone may choose to donate because the peer pressure they are facing outweighs the fear or other barriers they may have. In this context, anxiety and fear about blood donation exists as an important impediment to donor recruitment and potentially to retention. In a survey of more than 1,000 recent blood donors, we saw that the average donor reported moderate levels of fear of blood, needles, pain, and fainting. Of course, less experienced donors were more likely to report fear than more experienced donors. For example, more than 2/3 of first-time donors reported some level of fear of feeling pain, whereas less than half of those with 6 or more prior donations reported such fear. These data are likely due in part to reductions in fear with repeated exposure to donation, but probably also reflect self-selection out of the donor pool among the more fearful. Beyond the fact that fear is an obvious demotivator, another reason why fear may discourage future donation is that it's associated with increased risk for vasovagal symptoms such as feeling faint, dizzy, or lightheaded. To demonstrate this point, I'll briefly review the results of 3 studies we conducted with young donors in the United States. The first study was conducted in Kansas City. 3,407 high school students were randomly assigned to either receive or not receive a single question right after the pre-donation health screen. The question was, how afraid are you of having blood drawn from your arm? And this is the distribution of results that we got. A little over half of the sample said that they were not at all afraid, leaving about half of the sample who reported some level of fear between somewhat and extremely. And this graph shows the vasovagal reactions as a function of level of fear. The odds of having a reaction were more than twice as high for someone who was somewhat afraid versus not at all afraid, more than 3 times as high for somebody who was moderately or very afraid, and almost 6 times as high for somebody who was extremely afraid. And here's the 1-year follow-up data, showing that both fear and having a reaction were independent predictors of donor attrition. As shown in this figure, donors who had fear and a reaction returned at about half the rate of donors with no fear. The second study was conducted in Davenport, Iowa, using a similar design. And this is the distribution of fear ratings. Similar to Kansas City, about half of the sample reported being not at all afraid, and the remaining half reported some level of fear. And this is the distribution of vasovagal reactions amongst donors in Iowa. Once again, the odds of having a reaction were about twice as high for those who were somewhat afraid, 5 to 6 times as high for those who were moderately or very afraid, and more than 9 times as high amongst those who were extremely afraid. The third study was conducted with New York City high school and college students who were first-time blood donors. And this is the distribution of fear ratings for these New York blood donors. As can be seen, those who were more afraid were more likely to report needle pain for the venipuncture needle. They were also more likely to experience vasovagal reactions, and they were less likely to return over the subsequent year follow-up. Importantly, in a recent cross-sectional analysis by Gilchrist and colleagues, the relationship between fear of blood draw and lower donation intention was shown to be fully mediated by donation confidence or self-efficacy and donation attitude. That is, individuals with more fear had lower donation intentions due to both lower donation confidence and more negative attitudes towards donation. Consistent with these relationships, we recently conducted a study to test the hypothesis that teaching young donors strategies to address their fear might help to enhance their confidence and ultimately may improve their retention in the donor pool. For the remainder of this presentation, Janis+France will review this study and provide more detail about the nature of the intervention than was possible in the published article.
For this study, we collected data from students at high school blood drives. After passing the health screening, donors were handed a tablet with a brief written description of the study. Donors who agreed to participate continued with the study, which was presented entirely using the tablet. 4,035 donors agreed to participate and continued with the study by responding to the question, How afraid are you of having blood drawn from your arm? With answer choices ranging from not at all fearful to extremely fearful. Just over half of the participants, about 54%, reported that they were not at all afraid and were coded as having no fear of having blood drawn. These donors received a message on the tablet thanking them for participating, and they continued with the standard donation procedure. The remainder of the participants, about 46%, were grouped together and categorized as fearful of having blood drawn. Everyone in this fearful group answered the follow-up question, which of these concerns you the most? And selected from the sight of blood, feeling faint or dizzy, or the donation needle. All of these participants who had reported at least some fear of donating were then randomly assigned by the tablet software to either the control group or the intervention group. Participants assigned to the control group were asked, how confident are you that you can cope with any fear you may have about donating blood? And they selected from 5 options ranging from not at all to extremely confident. Control participants then continued through the standard donation procedure. Participants assigned to the intervention group received feedback that normalized their fear and were instructed to put on the provided headphones and watch a brief video where coping suggestions for their reported type of fear were provided. We created brief videos to explain 6 different empirically based coping strategies. The video for each type of coping strategy lasted about 30 seconds and included a rationale for why that strategy can be helpful and instructions on how to put the strategy into action. Distraction explained the importance of turning attention away from fearful thoughts. Your attention works like a spotlight. While you focus on one thought or feeling, other thoughts or feelings are blocked out. A simple coping strategy is to turn your attention away from what you fear and occupy yourself with something that you enjoy. For example, while donating, you can use your phone to listen to music, play games, text a friend, or read. Another option is to talk with other donors. Acceptance encouraged acknowledgement of feelings while reducing the strength and impact of fearful thoughts. When you try to fight your fear, it can leave you feeling worse. Instead of fighting your feelings, try to accept them without judging or changing them. Fear is a normal human reaction that loses strength if you take a mental step back and observe it with curiosity and acceptance. How would you do this? Think of your mind as a river, a constant flow of thoughts and images. When you notice fearful thoughts or images coming into your mind, observe them with curiosity and then release them to float away downstream. Cognitive reframing described a process of changing the focus from fearful thoughts to positive reasons for donating. Sometimes it's helpful to view a situation from a different angle. What you are thinking influences how you feel. Instead of focusing on your fear right now, think about your reasons for donating. Imagine the person who will benefit from your generous gift of life. Allowing yourself to indulge in positive thinking will help counteract the fear. And the more vivid you make your thoughts, the more effective they can be. So, when you start to feel afraid, imagine the person you saved with your donation today. What do they look like? Where are they? And what are they doing? Seeking social support and information suggested asking for help and suggestions from blood collection staff. The donor specialists are experts in blood donation and are here to help make your experience as comfortable as possible. Tell them about your fear and ask for their help and suggestions. You can request a staff member who is skilled with new donors. Working with your donor specialist can help give you a sense of control and manage your fear. Hydration gave information about using pre-donation water loading to help maintain blood pressure during donation. If your blood pressure goes down while you are donating, you might feel faint or dizzy. One way to help keep your blood pressure up is to drink extra water while you wait to donate. Ideally, drink a full bottle of water about 10 to 15 minutes before you get in the donation chair. And applied muscle tension taught the use of repeated muscle tensing exercises to increase blood pressure during donation. Fainting can occur when your blood pressure gets too low. You can increase your blood pressure and help to maintain blood flow by tensing the muscles of your lower body. To prevent feeling faint, do this exercise while you're seated in the donation chair. 1. Squeeze your legs together and hold the tension in your legs, stomach muscles, and buttocks for 5 to 10 seconds. 2. Release the tension for 5 to 10 seconds. And 3. Repeat steps 1 and 2. Make sure you breathe normally. Don't hold your breath while you're tensing. Depending on which fear they had indicated as their primary concern, each participant in the intervention group viewed 4 of the coping videos. Donors who said they were most concerned about the sight of blood or the donation needle saw the distraction, acceptance, cognitive reframing, and seeking support instructions. Donors who said they were most concerned about feeling faint or dizzy while donating viewed the cognitive reframing, seeking support, hydration, and muscle tensing instructions. After viewing the video on the tablet, participants in the intervention group were asked, which strategy do you plan to use? And could choose from the 4 strategies that they had viewed. They then received an affirming message about their choice of coping strategy and rewatched the video clip specific to the strategy they had chosen. Next, participants in the intervention group were asked, how confident are you that you can cope with any fear you may have about donating blood? And selected from the same 5 ratings that had been presented to the control participants. Intervention group participants then continued through the standard donation procedure. Finally, after recruitment was concluded, additional data were retrieved from the donor record for all donors who had agreed to participate. The overall sample was about 17 years old, with similar proportions of individuals who self-identified as male or female. Approximately half of the sample identified as white, and about 1/4 identified as Hispanic or Latino. The vast majority of participants, 95.5%, did not receive a vasovagal reaction code. The remaining 4.5% were all coded as minor vasovagal reactions. As expected due to random assignment, the control and intervention groups had similar proportions of female to male donors and a similar distribution of reported primary concerns, that is, blood, needles, or fainting. There was no significant difference between the control and intervention groups on body mass index, estimated blood volume, pulse rate, or systolic or diastolic blood pressure. There was a statistically significant but unmeaningful difference in age, with the intervention group very slightly younger than controls, 16.9 versus 17.0 years. We first looked overall at whether we could predict vasovagal reactions. We used binomial logistic regression analyses to individually examine demographic factors, health variables, and donation fear status as predictors of vasovagal reactions. We found participants had significantly lower odds of having a vasovagal reaction if they were older, had higher diastolic blood pressure, or if they had higher estimated blood volume values. Participants had significantly higher odds of having a vasovagal reaction if they had reported being fearful of donating blood. In order to determine whether fear was still a significant predictor of reactions when the influence of the significant demographic and health variables were taken into account, we reran the binomial logistic regression analysis with forced entry of age, diastolic blood pressure, and estimated blood volume into the model. We found that fear remained a significant predictor of reactions after considering the effect of these other variables. We next examined whether the tablet intervention had an effect on donor confidence levels. A one-way analysis of variance revealed significantly higher confidence ratings among donors assigned to the intervention group versus those in the control group, but this difference was only a small effect size, Cohen's d of 0.24. As you can see from the graph, the largest proportion of donors in the intervention group rated themselves as extremely confident, whereas the largest proportion of donors in the control group rated themselves as very confident. Finally, fewer donors in the intervention group than the control group were coded in the donor record as having a vasovagal reaction, 6.1% versus 6.8% respectively. However, binomial logistic regression confirmed that this was not a statistically significant difference. These findings confirm previous reports that nearly half of high school blood donors acknowledge fear of having blood drawn. It is worth noting that the true proportion may be even higher, since some donors may be reticent to admit their fear. Also consistent with earlier studies, we found that fear of having blood drawn was the strongest individual predictor of reactions and remained significant even after controlling for other predictive variables such as age, blood pressure, and estimated blood volume. In this study, we also found that providing fearful donors with information and choices about how they might better cope did lead to significantly higher reported confidence. But the small effect size of this boost in confidence may not be sufficient to reduce the risk of vasovagal reactions. As I noted earlier, we did see a slightly lower rate of reactions in the intervention group than in the control group, but this difference was not significant. However, it is important to consider that greater confidence as a result of providing a coping intervention may have an influence on willingness to provide a future donation. Given the large proportion of young donors who report fear, a confidence-building intervention that leads to even a small increase in the odds that they provide a future donation has the potential to provide a meaningful increase in overall donor retention. As always, there are some limitations to be mindful of when considering the findings of this study. Since our sample was restricted in age and donation experience, and everyone donated at one particular type of blood-derived setting, these findings may not generalize to other groups or contexts. In addition, shortly after the conclusion of the study, COVID-19 led to school closures and a moratorium on high school blood drives. Many of these participants lost the opportunity to provide a repeat donation at a high school blood drive in the following year, and we lost the ability to collect follow-up donation data from such drives. Additional studies are needed to further explore the potential immediate and longer-term benefits of providing coping strategies on-site to fearful donors, and to examine other questions which were not addressed here. These might include questions such as, were donors adherent to the coping strategies they said they would use? And were some strategies more effective than others at building confidence? So, to sum up, our brief, on-site, tablet-based coping intervention was not successful in reducing reactions, but it was associated with increased donor confidence that they could manage their fears. At an individual level, these findings provide further support for the potential positive psychological impact of identifying and intervening with fearful donors for their own benefit. In addition, there are potential positive implications at more of a systems level. At minimum, identifying fearful donors will alert collection staff to those who are at greater risk for reactions and related injuries. Further, providing a time and cost-efficient, simple intervention may improve the retention rate of these donors and have a long-term positive impact on the blood supply. Thanks for listening to our talk.
We look forward to your questions.
Hi, I'm, no. Ready?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Janis+France,
And I'm Chris France.
and we're health psychologists at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, USA.
Thank you for coming to our talk, which is titled A Tablet-Based Intervention to Increase the Confidence of Fearful High School Blood Donors. Thank you for coming to our talk, which is entitled Increasing the... No, it's not. It's a tablet-based intervention to increase the confidence of fearful high school blood donors.
And who chose such a long title?
Thank you for coming to our talk. That's probably good enough. Does that work?
Yeah, are you going to show the, do you have a slide showing the,
Title is going to be above us. Go ahead.
okay.